Welcome everybody to the latest edition of Black People Parenting. Of course, it's me, Showtime. Some people know me as Showtime. Some people know me as Dion. Whatever you call me, just know that I am a Black person that's parenting, and I'm happy to be here. Now, this is the first episode of Black People Parenting with my new co-host. Kind of my new co-host. She's not new to the Black People Parenting circle, but this is the first episode that we are doing together. She's helped me coordinate some of the episodes. If you're part of the Black People Parenting Facebook group and community, you know her as one of the HAIC head admins in charge. He goes by the name of Dr. Tiffany Wiggins. Dr. Wiggins, hello, ma'am.
Hey, y'all. How's it going?
Going pretty good. Good to see you here. This episode of the show is about co-parenting. So we're going to talk about co-parenting. We have some guests that are going to talk about their co-parenting experiences and their co-parenting journey. And we thought that this was an important conversation to have because Tiff and I both have experiences as co-parents. And I think we did a room on Clubhouse a couple of months ago. And we realized that our experience as co-parents were totally different, right? Like I come from a totally different, at one point more hostile, more volatile, more anger, more just more stuff.
Right.
Tiff's stuff is a little bit more controlled, and they buy each other's gifts on Father's Day and Mother's Day, and they do all sorts of cool stuff for each other, and just they're on really, really good terms. And we'll get into it, but I just don't come from that. So we decided that this would be a great episode because everyone's co-parenting journey is not the same, right? Everyone comes from a different background when it comes to co-parents, just like your life experience, like your experience as a co-parent, your experience with parenting a child or children with someone who, you are not necessarily married to, or you're not still married to, or you're not in a relationship with any longer, or you're not even on the same page with when it comes to certain things. It can pose some challenges, it can pose some obstacles, but there's also room, I always feel like there's also room for areas of growth. And I think this is going to be an episode where we can talk about not just the struggles of co-parenting, but also the growth that comes with co-parenting and having to look within yourself to kind of find and search for certain things. So it's going to be a really cool episode. Looking forward to talking to our guests. I'll let them introduce themselves. Tiffany, did you have anything you wanted to add on before I?
Yeah, only thing I was going to add, like Dion said, yes, our experiences are very different. But I think the fact that we've been talking about the idea or the concept of co-parenting within like the Black community, I don't know that we talk about it enough. There's this, perception that, co-parenting really is one parent has the kid and the other one, comes in and out or may not even be present. So I think it's dope that we're having this conversation that, go beyond what we talked about in Clubhouse, but then also having two guests here who can bring their perspectives and their experiences so we can kind of continue that conversation. And hopefully, my goal for sure is that somebody's going to connect to at least one of us in terms of their co-parenting or their co-parenting journey. And, at the end of the day, FTK before the kids, right? So we
for the kids.
For the kids. We just want to make sure that, we're having conversations and that we're giving people resources and advice and perspective so that they can make the best decisions for their family unit and for their kids.
Absolutely. Well, without any further ado, let's introduce our guests. Ladies first. This is someone that I've known for a very long time, probably over 10 years. I'm going to let her introduce herself. I'm going to let her tell us, let's just introduce yourself. Tell them your name, please, ma'am.
My name is Taunisha Zoa. I am an author. I've written 3 books. I actually have a co-parenting book out. I pretty much wrote that book when I didn't have anybody to co-parent with. Father was absent. So I just wrote what it was supposed to look like. I'm a mom of 5 biological kids, but I have 6 total in my house. And yeah, just rocking it out over here. They're all boys, so fun stuff.
5 dirty boys. Because
you just hit the nail on the head, Dion, because I just got finished doing laundry and you get a whiff of something and you're like, oh my God.
5 funky, stinky boys that just don't want to bathe. I'm sure they think. Okay, we'll come back to that.
Yeah.
We'll come back to that. Okay. And our next guest, this gentleman is also a co-parent. I want him to kind of talk to us about, introduce yourself and tell us who he is. Karl, go ahead and introduce yourself, sir.
Yes, I appreciate everybody. I'm Karl Macklin, member of Black People Parenting Facebook group. So much good content there, on a daily basis. So really enjoy that. A parent of one. I have one 15-year-old son who pretty, for sure pretty stinky, but I only have one of them. So obviously, it's a little bit easier for me to kind of manage our propensity to just not want to take baths. I don't know why we're that way. But definitely a co-parent, 15-year co-parent, if you will. So I'm excited to kind of talk through that and talk a little bit about my experience and hopefully gain some more tools from my toolbox, because I need some help.
Dope. All right, so let's kind of start the questions for both of you guys. I want to know, and Tiff and I both want to know from you guys what your story is as far as your co-parenting story. Taunisha, you said you have 5 boys.
Yes.
Karl, you have 1. But like we said earlier, everyone's co-parenting journey is different. And let me say this: we handpicked both of you guys to be on the show because we know that both of you all have interesting co-parenting stories and journeys. That is, Taunisha, you have documented your stuff. Like you said, you wrote a book about it, and I think people can gain a lot of insight into what it is like to co-parent, and kind of see some reflection in all of our stories, like Tiff said. So let's start with both of you. Start with Taunisha. What is your co-parenting story? You already told us that you have 5 boys, but just tell us, what is your story?
So my story is unique, very unique. A lot of people will probably be ashamed to tell this on this platform, but I'm not. I have 5 kids with 5 different men. So my oldest son's father, we were married, didn't work out. He is overseas, he's in France. So we co-parent, we get along, but he's just not here. His visa ran out and we got divorced and he went back home. So he has not seen his son in probably about 5 years. And I'm starting to see effects on him with that. I do have my boyfriend here that's pretty much took these kids in and embraced them like they're, his own. However, it's still just not the same like having your own biological parent, because your parent, you're attached to your parents basically they have your identity. So, they need to know their fathers or whatever and bond with their fathers. Kids need both parents. I also have my next son, his dad he's been in and out. He's 7 now, and we just still have not got to a good place. So, we'll probably elaborate on that more. I'm pretty sure you guys will have questions about that later. Then my middle 2 boys, they do not have their dads. Their dads do not see them. One of them have not met their dads, don't want to be involved. The other one, he probably has seen his dad 3 times, and he's 5 now. And then my youngest son, we're in the same household together, whatever. So we're together. So he sees his dad every day. Okay. So that's my story.
Okay. All right. Karl, what about you?
So I met my son's mother back in college. I was about to graduate. She's a couple of years older than me. So she was kind of, starting to kind of really establish herself. We just kind of smashed together, in life. I think that at that point,
wait a minute, you can't just say that. You just when you're talking about a co-parent, my mind went somewhere totally different. But okay, I'm sorry. Maybe it was just me. Okay.
So all of wherever all of you went is correct.
Got it. Okay, you like we smashed together in life.
In life,
you try to get philosophical with it. Okay,
biblically, but just that was kind of my first real relationship experience. And so we literally met and we're just glued to each other like every day pretty much after that. And he was not far behind. But I think that, we didn't have a real relationship. So we went from just really knowing each other to now we're parents. Mm-hmm. Now we're buying a house and now we're doing all of these grown up things. But I don't know that we're really grown ups yet. I know that I'm not. But he's here now, right? And that you kind of think that having a child adds some stickiness to it, but all it really does is compound all the things that you really don't know. It just makes those things worse. And so we struggled with that a lot for many, many years. And then at some point, when he was probably around 6, we just decided to separate and co-parent, and lived a couple minutes from each other. It went really, really, really well. Very actually pretty decent experience up until recently. And we'll get into that shortly.
Yeah.
Tell you why I'm just wilding out here now.
Well, no, we can't have you out here wilding, Carl. We can't do that. I can't have the brothers out here wilding. That's not what you want to do. I'm a living witness and testament that wilding ain't where it's at. That's not it. Tiff, why don't we tell our story, since you and I are kind of like the genesis of this particular episode? You go ahead and tell your co-parenting journey, and I will elaborate some on mine.
Yeah, I think it's interesting, funny to say that honestly, this episode was supposed to start or supposed to be me and my co-parent being the guest, so to speak, of this, because I do feel like I have a pretty good co-parenting relationship. And to be honest, like, it was not always that way. We have a daughter. She's 9 years old. This was someone who I was in a long-term relationship with. So we were together just under 8 years when we broke up, and our daughter was probably about 5 at that time. And it kind of ended pretty suddenly. And I was in Virginia. He moved back to DC. And honestly, I didn't know how it was going to go. I assumed he would. Well, I wanted him to stay involved because he and my daughter have a pretty good relationship. But, sometimes feelings get in the mix of things when people break up, and it impacts the children, unfortunately. But luckily, it did not. He and I did not necessarily get along in the beginning. Communication was primarily via like emails and text messages. But he still showed up, he still continued to be her dad. And then over time, I think as the emotions of the relationship kind of left, kind of got out of the mix of things, things between he and I got better. So 4 years later, I have moved to North Carolina. He's still in DC. He's married, has a baby on the way. I'm over here living my life. So, we have, grown and went on to do our own things. But, our daughter still remains priority number one. He will come from DC to North Carolina pretty often, probably like twice a month, at least, to come see her. She spends, the majority of the summer with him. She just got back from spending time with him this summer. So, and then around the holidays, we figured that piece out too. But we make it work and we just communicate. And I think keeping her center is what helps that. So I think, I tried to be very clear in the beginning, like, yeah, we had our own stuff, but like, that's not really what I'm here for. You know what I mean? Like, I can put that to the side to make sure our daughter's good.
Yeah.
So I think that helped. And was it easy? By no means. But I think that helped us get to where we are. So like Dion said, yes, we're at a place now where, we can have decent conversations and we can, text one another about certain things, or he gives me Mother's Day gifts, I give him Father's Day gifts, etc.
Yes.
But it works.
Things are very zen over there. Like it's a very peaceful, calm situation.
I mean, for the most part, I would say that.
Right. So, I get it.
Yeah. What about you, Dion?
Well, my journey is similar to Carl's. My oldest daughter, I have 2 children. My daughter is 17 and my son is 3. So my 17-year-old, her daughter and I met when I was 22, maybe 22.
Her mother.
Yeah. What did I say?
Her daughter.
I'm sorry. No, definitely not that. Her mother and I met. I'm sorry. When I was about 22 years old. We dated for 3 months. She ended up getting pregnant. We ended up splitting up when she was about 6 months pregnant. And I just decided that it wasn't really, it just wasn't right. Like it wasn't really where I wanted to be, but I wasn't going to not be a part of my child's life. Right. So I decided when my daughter was born that I was always going to be a part of her life, regardless of what the circumstances were. You know what I mean? So my daughter was 1. Her mother moved from Virginia, where we lived, down to Raleigh, North Carolina. And we were doing like the every other weekend visitation. And I tell people all of the time, like the first 6 years of my daughter's life, her mother and I, we were in court every summer, like without fail. I was fighting for visitation. I was fighting for the right to be able to talk to my daughter on the phone at one point. I was fighting for the right to be able to just, do all sorts of things. But every summer, like clockwork, we found ourselves in court. And it was a very, very hostile situation. It was one of those. It was one of those. I didn't had the police called on me for no reason. I didn't had child protective services come to my home with reports of abuse erroneously. You name it. I done been through it, right? So that journey then led me to say, all right, well, I'm tired of being apart from my daughter when she was 6 years old, maybe when she was going into kindergarten, when she was going, so what's that, 6, 5, that's 5, when she was 5 years old. So I moved from where I was living in Virginia down here to Raleigh in 2010. And just because I wanted to be closer to her. And even with me moving here, the relationship between her mother and I was still very rough. It was still very rocky. Her mother ended up getting married and having another child. And, I just think that, when communication isn't there, I think Tiffany said it earlier, when you don't have the ability to communicate or you don't have the desire to communicate as an adult, then things can blow up. Like small things become gigantic. And I just think that was our issue. Looking back now, I think that was our issue. Like neither of us knew how to effectively communicate our desires and what our wants were for our child. Like we both may have very well had the best interest of our child in mind. But we didn't know how to communicate those things, right? Because there was always tension. It was always just rah, rah, rah. Like, I'm going to get the best of you and you're not going to get the best of me. And blah, 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 blah. And it wasn't until recently, maybe my daughter's 17, maybe 3 years ago, maybe 3.5 years ago, where like all of the beef just stopped. Like I just woke up one day and it was just over. Like there was no explanation. There was no conversation, no like, hey, this is what it just stopped. And now we're at the point where, like Tiff and her daughter's father, we have conversations, we'll laugh and joke. Like you would think that we never went through anything, right? Like if you hear us talking now or see us like outside of a store or something talking, like you would think that there was never any type of negative history between us. And I think that's the way that it should be, right? And I think it takes a while for a lot of us to get to that point, to understand that like it ain't about me, it ain't about you, it's about what are we doing for these babies? Like what are we doing for these kids? Like what do we do to be in the best, put these kids in the best possible situation they can be in? Like, okay, you don't like me, I don't like you, that's cool, but we got a child to raise, we got kids to raise, and they need their emotional support. And it wasn't until later on in my daughter's life that I realized the effect, because I'm thinking that, again, we'll get into this later, but I'm thinking that as a father, I'm there, I'm doing everything, I moved here, I did this, I did that, but I never took into consideration what effect the relationship between me and her mom when it was at its worst. I never took into account what effect that was having on my daughter. Right. My thing was, I never talked bad about her around, you know what I mean? But my energy was different, and kids pick up on that type of stuff. So even if you don't, even if you don't say something, like your energy is different and they pick up on that. So it's like I'm looking back and regretting some of those things and just thinking about all those moments that I lost for 14 years just because me and her mom were just like always at odds, you know what I mean? And I think that's just, that's a part of the journey. It's a part of growing up, and it's just something that you learn along the way. You know what I mean? I don't think that anyone was right. I don't think anyone was wrong. I just think we just had different perspectives, and those perspectives, kind of played out in our relationship with each other.
Yeah, it's funny you mentioned that. One day it just kind of dissipated, because I feel like that happened in my situation, even though it happened much earlier. Mm-hmm. But I just remember in the beginning there being communication between us. Like I said, it was mostly text messages and emails. And I got to the point where I was just like, whatever I would ask him or say to him, I was just like ready for him to like go off or say something negative or whatever, right? And then this one day I sent him a question or something, a text. And he was just kind of like, okay. And I was like, what is happening? What is happening here?
Mm-hmm.
And I was still like on high alert for a long time until finally I was like, okay, like we have turned a corner,
Mm-hmm.
and,
Mm-hmm.
I'm still going to kind of like watch my back, but it just kind of happened that way. And another thing I wanted to touch on too was this idea of like the effect that it has on the kids. And I know we can go on that more in depth, but one day I just remember, like I said, my daughter was always the focus. And I just remember one day, her father and I were in the same room and she was there and she was just like, doing her thing, living her life. And I was just like, she is at peace with us being in the same room and being okay. Like that was always a fear that I had, that she
Mm-hmm.
would get to a place where she's like, oh God, I don't want them in the same room. You know what I mean? Like we can't exist or coexist in a peaceful way. And me just kind of sitting back and looking at it one day, and I was like, okay, like this is good, like she can have her mom, she can have her dad, knowing, the circumstances, and not create any sort of anxiety or, high emotions on her side. So, yeah.
Yeah, I think, and I want to know what Tanisha and Carl have to say about um, this next question. But just I want to, you said something, Tiff, like about it just going away. Like I remember the moment that it happened.
Mhm.
Like, and the crazy part is that it happened for us when we were leaving child support court. Right,
Right.
we were walking out of the door of child support court, and she made a joke, and I laughed, and that was it. And it was just like, it was just like
All the issues just dissipated.
everything was gone. Everything was
Wow.
gone. I'll never forget it. I'll never forget it. Like I held the door open for us. We were walking out of the court. Like, that's again based on our previous relationship, our history. That's not the type of things that we do.
Right.
Right? We don't hold doors open for each other. We try to slam them in each other's face. Let me get out of here real quick so I can close the door. You feel me? Like, let me make sure I have to say thank you. Like, let me.
Right.
We don't do those things. But so I guess it's all a part of growth. It's all a part of coming into your own as an adult. So Carl, let me ask you, what do you think makes a successful co-parenting relationship?
Well, I think some of the things that y'all touched on again, which I think is a common theology, is that you have to put the kids first. There has to be some common agreement and understanding that we're not going to see things the same. What's in the best interest of the child, go from there. For example, a relevant example is, the COVID shot, right?
Mm.
You have people who stand on very opposite ends of that. Historically, we didn't do vaccines with him. And so we're at this crossroads now where we had to make a decision. And those types of little things can often drive a bigger wedge if one is already there. And I think just what's important is just figuring out what's best for the kid. And then if you're doing that enough and you're practicing that enough, like showing up for like all his games and his activities, all these things that he does, we both show up. We're able to be in the same space with each other. It can be a little awkward, but we're able to do it because it's about him, right? So I literally got an email from her the other day because I make her email me. Don't text me, email me. Okay? Don't text me. I will block you. Okay.
That's the I need proof in case we ever go to court method.
There you go.
Send it to me in email, and
Right.
you'll get an answer when I feel like it.
Jeez,
But
I don't miss them days. I do not miss them days at all.
But he had parent night for school and his first soccer practice on the same night. So she was like, "Hey, listen, we both have to decide which one of these we need to be at. I'll be at one, you be at the other, you pick," that kind of thing. And just, you just kind of take those small opportunities to just have some cohesion. And honestly, outside of that, boundaries. The biggest issue between her and I were boundaries. There were never really clear-cut boundaries. We didn't have rules in the sense of even like child support. Like we had an agreement, and I've always been broadly responsible, and I've always taken care of him and taken care of her at times, because in my mind that's his mom, and her car can't be messed up because she needs to take care of school. So I would do these things, right, that I thought were the right thing to do, but those things didn't translate for her into any kind of co-parenting currency at all. I would sooner get her car fixed, and the next day she'd tell me to kiss her ass. I'm like, okay,
Whoa.
So that caused some, some issues, right? But I didn't set the boundary up. I was just doing things that I thought were the right things to do. So once we were able to establish those boundaries, that helped. So I just think that putting the kid first and having very clear boundaries, which unfortunately sometimes have to come court supported, is the right thing to do. I think that that's step one and two, and everything else will kind of fall in line after that.
Dope. Taunisha, what you think?
Yeah, I'm gonna. I have three things. The first one, I'm gonna piggyback off of what Tiffany said. FTK for the kids. Whatever is in the best interest of the child, that's what you need to focus on. Number two, worrying about what the child is doing versus the parent. You know, sometimes we still have feelings, and then we want to work. Oh, he has a new girlfriend. I don't want anybody around my kid. Blah blah blah. Listen. You got an active parent. That's all you need to be concerned about. You know, you guys will come to that place where, you know, you'll cross that bridge and you'll be introduced, etc. However you guys want to work it out. But you can't focus on that. You will like go crazy trying to figure out what's going on. Oh, he moved on so quickly. My child is like, listen, that's not the primary focus. So
That's
that
that's a word. I can't wait for you to lob that back over here at some point in this
Like
conversation.
Karl making all the faces.
seriously, guys, like
She popped the churchman in. Yeah.
I did. So that's the biggest thing. Like you can't be so consumed with what the other parent is doing, especially if they're active. That's pretty much all I care about them being active. When I first became a co-parent, I found myself in a co-parent situation. I wasn't concerned about, you know, who they were dating, etc. I was concerned about, listen, we have this child. We need to split the time 50-50 if it's feasible. And I also need your financial help because I didn't make this kid on my own. And the third thing I would say, just to piggyback off of what Karl said, like you have to have something in writing. You have to have something in black and white with some parents. Boundaries. Go get that custody order. Go get that support if you need that support. You know, we're not going to just go put a parent on child support because we're bitter that it's over and they've moved on. We're not going to do that. We should not be doing that. But if it's a situation where you find like, hey, like I know you, or if you guys have an agreement where you have the child 50% of the time and you're busting down all the finances, and then they do the same. If you guys can come to that type of agreement and it be amicable, that's good. But other than that, like those three things I've had to live by. Like
I wanna ask something because Taunisha, and forgive me, I every now and then I want to call you Abby.
it's fine. You can call me Abby too.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
So you said something, and you've posted something that made me think about what you just said. I want to talk about the fact that some people, particularly men, feel intimidated by the court system, right? So when you talk about getting things on paper, and setting those boundaries, like for me in my situation, I was one of those ones who said that, okay, I'm not gonna fuss and fight with you. I ain't gonna go back and forth with you. I'm gonna go downtown and we're gonna let these people handle it. Like from day 3, that's what it was. Like we gonna let them handle it. Like I ain't even gonna go back. I only got to talk to you. Like Karl say, send me an email. Don't pick up the phone. Just email me real quick. But I've had conversations with some men, and I've even been in situations myself that made me say, like, they make it hard. They make it hard for you to go down here, right? I tell people all the time, it's easier to go to the courts and say, I don't want to be a part of my child's life anymore. I relinquish all of my parental responsibilities than it is for a man to go down here and say, I want to be 50-50 custody in my child's life. What would both of you say to someone who has struggled with, I guess, having belief in the system, right? Because I'll tell anybody, the system ain't designed for men to actually be active and to want to be a part of their children's life. I'm living proof of it. It's not designed for us. What would you say about men who struggle with that and say, okay, well, I want to do that, but if I take off of work, it's going to take me 8 hours to go downtown and fill out the paperwork and do this and do that. I can't take off of work because I got to pay child support. If I don't pay child support, I'm going to jail. If I go to jail, I can't see my kid. If I can't see my kid, it's going to be, you know what I mean? So it's almost like a hamster wheel of trying to do what's right, but also trying to do what almost makes what's logical in the situation, right? So what would you all say for someone who struggles with that in a co-parenting situation, trying to figure out what to do when they feel like they don't have any help?
I feel like if it's because I was just debating with somebody about this today. I feel like if it's done prematurely, you won't have these issues. I feel like if you're there from day one, I feel like you won't have those issues. I feel like if you're active, you're around, you keep your receipts. Hey, I want to see my kid. The first moment you see the controversy, you file. Listen, feel like it looks better if you go down there as a man and say, look, I want to put myself on child support. I want to file for joint custody because I don't want to deal with arguing, bickering, etc. My kid is first priority. So if that means I got to wait 3 months for a court date to be away from my child so I can get something in paper, then I'm going to make that sacrifice to do that. I think what happens is men sit and they wait and they wait and they wait. You know, a year go by and it's drama, 2 years go by and it's drama. Then they finally get with the woman, right? Because the right woman that comes in your life is going to push you to be active in that kid's life.
Right.
Listen, we're not dealing with that drama. We're going to file for paperwork. You can't see your kid. What you mean you can't see your kid? You're a parent too. You have equal rights to that child, right? So sometimes it takes that woman and to put that battery in that man's back to go down there and say, hey, look, I'm standing up for my child. This is what I want. Now, unfortunately, in situations like that, I do agree with you. It may not be designed for the fathers. That's why I say you got to get a jump on this early. Don't sit around and say, I ain't dealing with it. I'm just going to pay my money and I'm done with her. I'm tired of the drama. No, at the first sign of controversy, you need to be down there. Make that sacrifice. Take the time off to go down there and file the paperwork. Listen, I help men do that every day. They reach out to me. Look, because I filed for custody of all my kids by myself and got custody. I didn't have an attorney except for one. And that's because the father is extremely wealthy. And I wanted to make sure, you know what I'm saying, I wasn't going to get my butt handed to me in the courtroom, especially since he hadn't been active or whatever. And when we went to court, my son was 3. But I filed that paperwork. Listen, they don't help you. I went in there. At first, I got it right. I got it wrong. Nope, this is wrong. They don't tell you what's wrong. Go over there, fix it, and come back, and we'll file it again. Listen, I went in there 11 times. On the 11th time, I finally got all the paperwork right, and I just kind of memorized it. And I was like, oh, I got this. So I filed for all the custody of my kids. I also did it for another reason, right? Because to protect my kids, because I don't want my kids to get to an age 12, 13 years old. They start asking me questions, and then I'm like, well, you know, this is who your father is. You know, they opted to not be around. And guess what? I have it in black and white that they had access to you. They opted not to have this access. That's going to protect me. I don't want my child to be 13 years old and the father come around, well, I had a tough relationship with your mom. Like, she didn't want me around. No, this said you had access. This says that you opted not to be there.
Get them.
So that's what I would say in a situation like that.
Karl, what you think?
Wow. I mean, first of all, that's powerful stuff. That's a lot of effort just to get things in order. And in the words of the poets, the Migos, and then get straightened but straightening. Okay, you gotta straighten your stuff out.
Wait. The poets, the Migos.
The poet, the Migos.
The prophet Quavo.
But straighten. Okay.
You got me crying.
Get you some straightening in your life. Okay. So, but I do agree. So here's the thing.
Can I hold on 1 second? Can I say that I'm sure there are a lot of podcasts out there, parenting podcasts. I don't think any parenting podcast has ever mentioned the Migos and referenced. I would bet my house on that. Continue, sir.
This is Black people parenting.
Migos, let's go. Listen, but now, a couple of things. Most court systems aren't really designed to do what's best for a Black child, right? That's just a fact. They're not designed to say what's going to be in the best interest of this child emotionally and psychologically. Their job is to set boundaries, set things in order by law, right? So I think there will always be a stigma associated with anyone that looks like me having to go to the court system for help. They're not designed to help me. Okay. Now, one of the things that, is important though, is that there's certain things called mommy states, and mommy states are states where the courts are kind of designed to just benefit the mom no matter what. It's just designed that way. If I'm not mistaken, North Carolina is not one of those. So they really strip it down and they don't have any kind of preferential treatment for the mom. There's no automatic decisions based on the mom or anything like that. So, understand that that can work to your advantage. But, the idea that getting those things in order, however you decide to do it, is so critically important. For my son's mom and I, we just went to a notary. We had a document drawn up. We went to a notary. That was kind of our first step. So you don't always even have to jump to the courts. You don't have to go straight down. You can go get something drawn up that both of you agree to, especially if both of you are, willing to do what's right and come to some kind of agreement. You can get a notary to sign it, and that's as good as gold. So, understand that, it doesn't always take you having to go downtown, because nobody enjoys that. The parking is bad. You got to go through security. Who wants to go?
Hot.
It smells bad.
It's hot, and it's no fun. So, understand that, there are other steps first that you can take. And that's what we did. We always had an agreement on file. To Tanisha's point, though, I think what's key, and this was what probably saved me, is that I've always been responsible. I've always made sure that whatever obligation was needed, I took care of it. I took care of obligations that weren't mine. I understood that, being there for him was all I really cared about. And I didn't want anything to get in the way of me being able to be at his soccer games, be at all his awards, pick him up when I get ready. At one point, we had a very loose kind of relationship, in the sense that, if I wanted to go pick him up, I would just call and be like, hey, I'm going to come pick him up today. It's my off day, but I'm going to pick him up anyway. No problem. And that's still okay with her, but we did need some straightening. We needed some straightening. Yeah, we needed some boundaries. Yeah. But we always had kind of a core agreement. I mean, we would literally come up with a schedule ourselves and go and have it notarized every year. This is a schedule. The holiday thing was very easy for us. Thanksgiving meant more to her family than it did to mine. They did kind of a big old thing. So she always did the Thanksgiving thing. I always picked him up on Christmas Day, and he usually was with me through the new year. So we've always been able to have those things that are kind of in place that don't really require a lot. But we did get to a place where a trip downtown was necessary. Arbitration is uncomfortable. If you have to go through that, it's an uncomfortable experience, because all they want is agreement and alignment. And, you're trying to now go back through years and years and years of this relationship to try to figure out what to do, what to say. And they're like, do you want them on Tuesdays? Yes or no? And it's like, well, of course I do. But I don't know if I've ever had them all Tuesdays, and everything you agree to, they document, and it goes into the court documents. They draw it up, they send it to you, you sign it, and it's on the books. It's official. So I would just encourage all men and or women who are in a position that where they need those boundaries set, is to take a look at some of the other things you can do. If you have a willing and able parent that doesn't mind just doing a notarized agreement, that'll provide some protection for you, and provide some boundaries. But ultimately, at the end of the day, the process is to go through court, set up custody, set up child support agreement, all that stuff. That's really truly the process. And the more comfortable you get with that process, the better you'll be, because that ultimately is the law of the land. It trumps everything. And I want to have the trump card. No MAGA, right? I want to know that whatever I have and whatever I said and agreed to is what it is. Because outside of that, like, if we're not playing by those rules, then I got to play by other rules. You don't want me to play by those rules.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? Either we're going to do what this document says, or I'm going to do what I want to do. You don't want me to do what I want to do.
Right.
So let's just get that in place. But all the information is on, online, that you can find. There are lawyers who will talk to you for, not a lot of money to help get you. So there's help out there. Take the steps to do it. Get yourself some straightening and go from there.
And I think it's important. I think one thing that we don't talk about enough is that you have to know your rights.
Yes.
And I don't think enough of us know our rights. In the beginning of me going through what I went through with my daughter's mother, I made it a point to read every book and anything that I could get my hands on about knowing my rights. So, like Abby said, that's how I found out like how to fill out those documents on my own.
Right.
So, I didn't get a lawyer until I absolutely needed one. Right. I was 23 years old. I couldn't afford $5,000 every time you got to go, no. I'm going to fill this stuff out myself. And then if I get it wrong, let me know I got it wrong. I'll go back and fix it. I'll do this. And then when it's time to actually stand in front of a judge, then I'm going to have some representation. But before then, I'm gonna try to cut a corner. I'm trying to save $1, right?
Yes.
But we don't know our rights. Like, we don't know that we can do that. Right. We don't know that we actually have, a lot of us, we have just as much right to the child as the next person, right? This is, we created this child equally. So I think it's important to know what our rights are. Tiff, you got a question?
Yeah, I was just in here thinking as you all were talking, how many, those of us on the call here, like, do we talk to our partners at all? Like, about like what our plans were to like parent this child, whether we were with that person at the time of procreation or not. Like, just curious, like, were those conversations had? 'Cause I know on my side, like, yes, we were in a relationship, but I don't know that we ever like truly had a conversation about like,
that's
raise our kid, or if
that's a good question, Tiffany.
Yeah, things don't go a certain way. This is how we would handle it. Because I think about what you're saying, Dion, like, know our rights, but do we even like think about that beyond like the moment?
Because really, that's one, actually, before even having to worry about knowing your rights, is can we just have a conversation that says if we were ever to split up, this is how we would handle it. That's a conversation that would probably save a lot of people a lot of money and time. But you don't want to have those conversations because you don't want to talk about the alternative. You don't want to talk about a plan B. You don't want to talk about
people don't want to have those conversations because they're automatically offended. Well, what do you mean? Does it mean we're not going to be together? Are you going to break up with me? Are you trying to leave me? Are you trying to take half? And mine automatically goes to the negative instead of saying, hey, we need to prepare for this rainy day. And that's okay. Yeah. That's probably why I know that's why I'm in this situation I am now, and I have kids with multiple men, because I didn't have those conversations. Mm-hmm. And as soon as a child was brought, the relationship was fine, everything was fine, but as soon as that responsibility came, what you said, Karl, the responsibility, oh, I'm out. I can't do this.
The most important word in parenting, responsibility. Do we think that there's a difference between that though and like the stigmas we have around having all types of uncomfortable conversations, like, how do you handle death? And do you have, like, there's a lot of those types of conversations that seemingly, if you think back, we just don't have.
But even in having conversations with, let's say, like premarital counseling, they tell you to talk about like, what are your deal breakers, right? What are you going to do if you found out that your partner cheats on you? Are you automatically going to leave? Are you going to stay? Are you going to try to work it out? What do you do if you found out your partner has a hidden bank account that you didn't know about, and they have $5 million in there that they never told you about, right? So those are conversations that, like you said, we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable and having certain conversations, especially as older adults, right? And we're all older, 35 and up, I would assume. We have to start having conversations about like you said, like real life things, right? Especially in this age of COVID, right? Like, death is a thing. I was having a conversation with a friend of mine earlier today, and we were just talking about how, he was planning on making sure that his children were straight. So he had a $1 million life insurance policy. So if anything ever happens to him, like his kids are straight. They're not fumbling and mumbling trying to figure out, well, what do I do? What am I supposed to do? How am I going to do this? How am I going to do that? So he's setting them up to be in a position to win if he's not here. But those are conversations that historically we as Black folks don't always have. And I think
sorry.
Go ahead, Tiff.
No, I was just gonna say, I think it's interesting because I agree with everyone, but yes, these are difficult conversations, but at the end of the day, like, we're talking about like lives, you know what I mean? Like, so what is it to have go through a difficult or uncomfortable moment and really talk this out versus ruining or damaging these children, and what their lives could end up turning out to be just because we were afraid to just be honest, you know what I mean? Or to really sit down and think about, okay, what impact is this going to have on our kid if we decide to go this route, or vice versa. So yeah, it's heavy and it's a lot, but I think like as a people, we just got to do better with just facing it, right? Because like Karl said, like, it's not just that, it's not just that question about like, oh, how do we parent, or what happens if things don't go a certain way, but that's just life. Like, things are always going to be hitting us in the face all the time, and we got to be ready. And I think if we have those important conversations and those uncomfortable conversations early, then maybe we don't have to kind of go down these paths and deal with all this tension, that our children are basically going to kind of experience as they grow up, and hopefully won't continue as a generational curse, but could, you know.
So let's talk about the children's experiences. I want to ask you too, what do you all think the impact has been, if any, on your children, um, having to have their parents not in the same household, right? Whether the relationship has been stressful or toxic or whatever the case may be, however the relationship is. Do you think that has impacted the children?
I do. I do because, for one, especially when parents aren't on good terms, guess what? They could be played against each other, Oh, I go over to this house. It's fun over here. I ain't got no bedtime. I could do what I want. I could stay on my iPad for 10 hours. I could do whatever I want. Then we come back to the structure, and it's like literally having to retrain them all over again, right? Then also, if you guys aren't on good terms and there's a lot of turmoil, like I said, you can be played against one another. Well, my dad said this about you. Well, my mom said this about you. Well, I overheard her saying this about you. You know what I'm saying? So that's how they can be impacted. I went through that with one of my son's fathers or whatever. He heard a lot, he saw a lot when he was with his dad. And then he basically, told him like, well, I stayed away because, your mom was just an evil person. And we know that's not true. Like, tell your son the truth. But of course, you want to paint me to be the bad guy because it benefits you. You see what I'm saying? So I had to sit down and have a hard conversation with my 7-year-old about custody and paperwork, etc. I had to talk to him about that because, like, that information he was taking it from his dad and it was being used against me. So I think that's one way the kids are impacted. They feel like they're over here, and even with them dealing with, like, my boyfriend, well, I don't have to listen to him. He ain't my dad. This, 10 and third, or if the dad is saying something about the spouse or whatever that's in the household, it could just be very convoluted. So yeah, that's my take on that.
When my kid was 6, I'll never forget having to, explain to him that, daddy's going to live in a different house and, this kind of thing. And I'll never forget him saying, oh, so I'll have like 2 bikes and 2 toy boxes. Like, he looked at it like, like a child would, right? Not placing any blame or wrongdoing on anybody. He was just like, oh, so I could just have 2 of everything and I'll come to your house and come to mommy's. He just didn't have a clue, and he really bailed me out having that attitude, right? Because had he taken it harder, I'd have struggled with that. But the fact that he was able to somehow find some silver lining, he totally bailed me out completely, right? Because I was ill prepared for that conversation had it went a different direction. I do feel like, what's that?
I said, that's awesome.
he
and honest.
He gets whatever he wants because of that. But literally. It, even by the numbers, you think about how many dollars could have been invested into other things. I don't know about anybody else, and I'm not afraid to say it, but I pay $1,200 a month in child support, right? So, and I think about, all the dollars that, they do currently go to his education, but just over time, like how that money could have been used to put him in a better situation in life. Had we been able to keep things together, there has to be an impact. And when I look at him and academically how he excels and athletically how he excels, I often wonder if he has a chip on his shoulder. I'm not really sure how to ask him that, because he pushes himself hard. And so I often wonder how much better he would have been had we been able to give him the stable home environment that all parents want to give their child, right? Or would it have had the adverse effect? You just really don't know. He's turned out to be quite exceptional. And you never know whether or not that was just by design, right? Is that just by God's design? He found a way to use that as fuel to push himself. That's a lot to put on a child. And that not being able to give him the home environment that I also felt like I wanted, as a child, is by far my greatest disappointment in life. By far. Even if he turns out to be the most exceptional human being ever, I'm still going to regret that I didn't have the tools and the focus or effort to put him in the best possible situation that I could, as a parent, and building a household for him, to again break generational curses and do all these things that we want to do. I completely failed at that. So
I think that's a good point you bring up, Carl, because I feel like the conversation or the topic comes up a lot about this idea that, two-parent households create the best circumstances for kids, and, all this other stuff. And I've always been of the belief, like, I'm not gonna stay with anybody if I'm unhappy, because if I'm unhappy, like, there's no way that this is a good environment for my child, right? So I don't necessarily believe that, if we were to stay together, like, things would be better.
right.
So when you say that, it makes me wonder, like, would that have been the better circumstance for him?
What if it's a monster?
What'd you say?
That what if is a monster.
I mean,
Yeah.
it is.
I feel like you would rather have two happy, healthy parents in separate households, loving on the kid like the way he's supposed to be loved, versus that kid witnessing abuse, verbal abuse, arguments, sadness,
even
anger,
cognitive dissonance. Two parents that are not connected in a loving way, right?
Yeah.
Even if it's not abusive, and kids, like Dion, the kids can pick up on that.
They
like
can.
you wouldn't believe. And I don't know, Doc, I think you told me that it was probably better that he grew up in two separate happy households than one maybe not so. You probably the one that told me that, actually. So
you know what though? Also, Carl, like what Tiffany just said, it's like, all right, we're gonna, because you have some people that say, okay, guess what? We're gonna stay together for these 3 kids, right? So they stay together for the kids. Soon as the last one gets 18, is in college, they split up. Guess what? That affects the kids more at 18, 19, 20 years old, because they feel like their whole life was a lie.
Right.
So now it's like, oh, well, my mom and dad are not together anymore. Like they struggle, because I see it all the time. They struggle because they feel like, well, dang, you guys really weren't happy. Like you did that for us. You wasted 20, 30 years of your life just to make sure we were raised in a household where, we had both parents. So
and they feel guilt, right? Now
they're guilty. Now they struggle with all these issues, and they need therapy.
Yeah. And I think as parents, I think one of our jobs is to raise children who don't need to recover from
their childhood,
things that they've experienced in their childhood that we could have changed, right? So I'll ask you too, what are some strategies that you all have put into place, whether it be therapy, whether it be conversations, whether it be prayer and your faith, but what are some strategies that you all have put into place to kind of, and I don't even want to use the word protect, because I don't know that we can always protect our children, right? Because the world is out there. I think we can prepare them. But as much as we want to, I don't think we can always protect them. So what are some of the things that you two have done to prepare them for this reality of, growing up? And when I say growing up, I mean growing up and realizing that they didn't have two parents in the same household, right? Like I grew up with a single mom, and my dad dying when I was 11 years old. He and my mom weren't together. But that's something that didn't affect me until I got into my 30s. And I didn't start to think about it until I got into my 30s. Like, damn, like what if my pops would have still been around and I would have been able to have a real live relationship with him and been able to like kick it with him like now? Or how come I only really know, when you look at it, I really only know one side of the story. That's my mom's side of the story. I don't know his side of the story. I know that he, I know he used to drink. I know he used to get high, but I also know that he loved his kids. But that's something that I never got to have a conversation with him about, right? Yeah. So what are some of the strategies that you all are putting in place to kind of to help your kids protect their peace? Is actually the best way I want to put it. How are you helping them do that?
Well, I think the biggest thing is number one, being open and transparent, with them, and to have those conversations with them, and to make sure that they absolutely know it is not their fault. Your circumstances, as far as the way your home life is set up, is a direct result of my failures to be a grown-up, to have the tools to manage conflict and be vulnerable. Like all these things that, people write books about. Yeah, I just didn't have them. But I can make a baby though.
Listen.
I think I still can. I don't know. I'm getting old. We'll see. To make sure that he, number one, understands that it's not his fault, but also to expose him, to continue to expose him just to the other things. I have so many friends and mentors and people who I look to who are doing it well and seemingly didn't have these tools either, but they figured it out. And they did what needed to be done. I think seeing those examples and being able to connect to those people, even outside of me, like all of my big bros and all these people, like my kid can reach out to them for advice without needing to connect through me first. I trust them to that level. So just making sure that his village is one that is extremely supportive and mirrors the life that I would want him to have, even if I wasn't the one that provided it for him. Making sure that he has plenty of examples of people to go to and to look at and to understand that he can have it, despite my failures as a co-parent or a parent. Like, you can still have this. You can still have this, and whatever I can do to support you having it. Because I'm not, we don't have like this bitter situation. It's not, it's not really like that. You know what I mean? He has a good mom. His mom is, like an executive assistant of his life. All of his doctor's appointments and all of his registrations. I mean, she just handles business. I don't particularly care for her, but she handles business. All I need to know, all I hear or get in my emails, this is what it costs and this is what it is. Do you have any objections? So I also try to make sure that, I let him know that, relationships are complex, and I can have respect and appreciation for your mom as your mom, but also maybe not necessarily want to talk to her if we're in the same room either. Like, those things can coexist. So don't look at one and don't judge your mom based on how I feel about her. Your mom handles your business. She does. She takes good care of you. I will give her that. I'll give her that. So appreciate her for that. Understand that she works very hard to make things happen for you. And our failure in a relationship is completely irrelevant. Completely irrelevant.
Yeah, I'll say, just to piggyback what he said, same thing. Transparency, being honest with these kids. Like I said, when those conversations, hard conversations come up, have them regardless of how uncomfortable it makes you. Therapy. I've had to have a lot of therapy, not only for my kids, but for my childhood, and trying to recover and trying to navigate why some of the decisions was made when they were made, and resolve trauma. So I was able to get my boys some therapy as well, and definitely prayer. Like, I keep my boys covered, praying against like orphan spirits and things like that, making sure they don't feel like they're orphans, even though, their dads are in and out and things like that.
And Taunisha, you did that proactively, right?
Yes.
Therapy and therapy is often used as the Band-Aid or fix to an issue that has now become unmanageable.
Yeah.
I mean, like, you don't have the tools to help your kid get past what this, and then you put them in therapy. But the fact of the matter is that they should be in it all along, whether you have a happy home or not, whether you are a 2-parent household with a dog and a white picket fence. The fact of the matter is, like you were saying, Dion, this world is a crazy, crazy place. And what are we doing to prepare them for this crazy, crazy place that we live in? The best parents out there cannot prepare your child alone. And using therapy to make up for not only your shortcomings, but again, just to keep them ready and prepared for life, because you can't be there every second. Like you said, you can't really protect them from everything. We like to think that we can, but it's a myth. You have to have other tools in your toolbox and other resources that your child uses if you truly want to prepare them for not just, like she said, your unresolved childhood traumas, which we all have them, but also just those unknown things that the world presents. Like, to rely on yourself solely, I think you're doing your kid a disservice.
Absolutely. I'm glad y'all brought that up, though, because I say it jokingly, but I do mean it. I always say, like, I don't want to be the reason my child goes to therapy. I want her in therapy for sure, but
Right.
like, I don't want to be the reason.
He's not the sole reason.
Right. Exactly. So, but I'm glad y'all brought up the idea of the village, because when I think about my own situation, yes, I would consider it a success, but I can't say that it would be a success without a village, right? Especially now with, my daughter's father and I both are from Virginia, but like I said, he's now in DC. I'm in North Carolina, but our like homes and our families, for the most part, are based in Virginia. So we're able to rely on, them to really kind of help, support our co-parenting relationship, so there are times when my sister comes in and she kind of acts as quarterback to, a situation where I'm unavailable. His parents, are really great and very supportive. His sister comes in and she'll just be like, nope, I want my niece for, some days, like I need to spend time with them. And I think that really does help. And I think it also shows that, it's not just mommy and daddy or mommy versus daddy, right? Like that it's a whole village that's there to support her and make sure that she's good, So even though we are in another state, if she has an award ceremony, like family's going to try to see if they can come. She had a play earlier this year. Like we pretty much had the biggest, she had the biggest support system in this theater. But kind of having that village and knowing that there's other people there to kind of making sure that this thing works and that she feels like she has all the things that she needs. Because if I'm being honest, like I'm human, right? Like I can't give her everything. He can't give her every single thing. And we need those people to fill in the gaps and to really kind of push, her forward or give her, those pieces that maybe I'm not able to do because we all got our own stuff. We all got our own traumas and we all working through it, ourselves, and we do the best that we can, but recognizing that, like that Karl to say, like, there are people that she can reach out to that, regardless if it's, I'm present or not, like who I know are going to have her back, who I know are looking out for her best interest. And I think that if possible, because I know everybody doesn't have that, but if possible, if you can create a village around your children to kind of support them, I think that also helps the co-parenting relationship as well.
Yeah. And speaking of the village, I want to take a quick turn a little bit and talk about, sometimes a part of the village is someone who you may be dating or someone who you may be in a relationship with. Tiff, can you kind of tackle that and kind of lead the conversation since you all have such a great co-parenting relationship? And,
oh my God.
I'm going to be 100% honest, right? That probably has been the most difficult part of our relationship. Taunisha mentioned earlier, like, I don't care if you moved on quickly. I did, to be honest, right? Like that was a big thing for me because he did move on pretty quickly. And because she was so young, because we had been together so long, because our daughter didn't know anything different, right? Between like mommy and daddy, him moving on quickly for me, it made me nervous, right? Like, what do you mean? Like, can she get adjusted to the idea of mommy and daddy not being together? And now daddy living in another state before we introduce somebody else into the mix, right? So that was kind of my thing. Granted, that was 4 years ago. Like I said, they're married now. They have a baby on the way. So it works fine. He shared that information with me. So he told me when they got engaged. He told me, that, they were expecting a baby before, telling my daughter. So we have that. Do I have a relationship with his wife? Not really, but I know enough about her. I have her phone number. Like if I need to get in contact with her because my child is in their care, I have access to it. But for the most part, and I know this probably sounds weird considering like the successful co-parenting relationship, but my daughter's fine, right? Like she's at a place and she's old enough to tell me that, I like her, or this is, how I'm feeling about, this. We have those open, and honest conversations. I know that she is a, professional, respectable woman. I know that she's not going to do anything crazy to my daughter. And if so, I have access, right? So because I think that understanding has been, set out, I don't think, I don't necessarily have to be her BFF, but he's the person at the end of the day for me, like my co-parenting relationship with him, that's what's important. And that's what matters. And me knowing that when she is in their care, that she's okay, she's getting all the things that she needs. And her, like I said, knowing kind of what the expectations are in terms of parenting and raising her are for his wife, her knowing that, I think, when our daughter is there, she supports that and she does her part as a bonus mom. But yeah, I don't necessarily have like I said, we're not BFFs, but I think there's an understanding so that our daughter has what she needs.
Were you invited to the wedding?
Absolutely not.
Would you attend the wedding if you were invited?
Say that again.
If you were invited, would you go?
Probably not.
You're not pulling up. Okay, just checking.
Nah.
Just checking.
I'm pulling up.
Abby, what you think?
Yeah, I think that having that relationship with that, or for example, I think it's healthy. Like Tiffany, he told you, like, hey, I moved on.
Right.
You didn't like it, but he told you, because guess what? He could have hid that. I know when me and my ex-husband split up, my son was very, very young. He was 9 months old.
Wow.
And he didn't tell me, that's how I had to find out. Virginia police.
Wow.
They was calling me because the girl had like knocked him upside his head. And my baby was there, and they had to call me. I'm all the way in North Carolina. I swear to God, I got to Virginia in like 2 hours. That's unheard of. Unheard of, but I did it. Like, so that's how I feel. So I'm saying like I would have been thankful that he would have told me. So I'm like, okay, somebody's around, etc. But he didn't give me, that respect to even let me know. He was because we were still like technically married on paper and stuff like that. So of course he wanted to hide it and stuff like that. But I really feel like a bonus parent is somebody extra to love on your child. You know what I'm saying? That's a part of the village. I know my 7-year-old's dad, he was engaged at one point. So he's 7 now. Listen, the time he was engaged for 2 years, that's the most he saw his son because of that woman. She had my son more than he did, to the point where he was so irritated. Like, that's our child. Mind your business. You're doing too much. Matter of fact, don't go pick him up unless you come through me moving forward. So it created a wedge between their relationship, because everything that he had told her about me, she was starting to question, like, maybe she's not such a bad person. Because I'm trying to figure out, and I didn't have to tell her anything. I was just like, hey, see, you guys have been engaged, you come be around my son. All I ask is the discipline, keep that with his, with the dad, etc. But me and her ended up having a conversation. She ended up finding out who he really was, and they're not even married now. She went her separate ways, and that was probably the best thing for her. But yeah, like, I was happy that he had someone that was holding him accountable. So like when they broke up, I was sad, because I'm like, oh my God. And he went right back to his ways. He started getting missing, etc. Like, he does what he has to do because he's on paper now. He's actually like a pastor. So of course the custody holds him accountable. So he wants to make sure he's doing that, because, that's for another podcast, guys. But anyway,
the village, church folks podcast.
Black people churching.
Saved and sanctified.
Church people churching.
Yeah. So yeah, it's that the extra person is important, caring for your child and stuff like that. Like, I was actually happy she was good with him. He was so happy. Like, he talked about her and everything. So, she was like, hey, if you just need a break, call me. I'll come. Sometimes as parents, we need breaks. So, yeah, it was a pleasure.
Is there a time limit on when it is safe or when it is comfortable for your child to be introduced to someone that the ex is dating? Like, is it 6 months? Is it 3 months? Is it 2 weeks? Like, what does that look like?
I feel like you'll know. I don't think there's a time frame. I just feel like you'll know, like, as a parent. And sometimes we don't always get it right. But I feel like you'll know, like, okay, now is the time to introduce. But I wouldn't introduce my child in an intimate setting. I would first do like a park, or maybe like a baseball game or something like that, and kind of just ease it in like that. But like I said, I don't think there's a time frame. I think you just know, you might be in a relationship for 3 years, be single for 30 days, and then Mr. Right or Mrs. Right comes in, and then, boom, they're in front of you. But of course you have all these reservations because you're protecting this child. So I personally don't think it's a time frame. I just feel like it's that gut feeling. You'll just know, your discernment. You gotta have discernment.
Yeah.
That's a part of being a parent.
And Carl, I don't mean to cut you off, but
you're good. No, you're good.
I was just thinking about like my own circumstance, right? Like I said, 2 months, he's talking about somebody new, and I was like, absolutely not, right? And even though he didn't like it, he respected it, right? And then probably 4 or 5 months later, he came back and was like, okay, is now enough time, And then I was kind of like, let me meet her first, And then, I mean, long story short, it ended up being probably a year later, just by circumstance that that meeting actually happened. But even during that time, right, even though he wasn't happy with me about me kind of prolonging his, now wife meeting our daughter, I was fair, and I thought to be fair in that conversation. I'm like, I know you're not like feeling me right now. However, it's just because you moved on first, but I don't know what that's going to look like on my side. So I'm going to give you the opportunity, and I'm asking you, like, what would be comfortable, or what would you, as her father, if I start dating someone, like, what would be okay for you? And at that time he was like, honestly, like, I know you're not going to bring anybody crazy around our child, so like, I just trust your judgment. So I was like, okay, so now me being on the other side and me being the one that's single and dating, I have to figure that piece out too, because as a single mom, especially now in a state where I don't really have like tons of family and friends around, how do you date? How do you, you know what I mean? Like when you're a single parent, and not introduce your child, like how do you do that in a way that's safe and that, is comfortable for everyone? So I think, like Taunisha said, it depends, and you kind of know. Say luckily, but to some degree, because I interact with so many people in my 45 jobs that I have, right, that she's always meeting people, right? So I think I'm able to kind of like cover it in a way so that even if she meets someone, she may not necessarily know that that's someone mommy's dating until later on. She's also older now, right? So she's coming to me like, do you have a boyfriend? Like she's asking me those questions. Like, so if she does something, she's like, is that your boyfriend? When you get a boyfriend? So, which helps me because as a mom, like that was always the part I was like nervous about. Like, how is she going to act if I, get in a relationship with someone or start me dating or whatever? So, knowing that she's cool with it and actually wants it for me, makes it a little bit easier. But yeah, you still have to make those decisions kind of based on your gut and just kind of go with it and not beat yourself up for it if it doesn't necessarily go the way
work out. Yeah.
the way you thought it would. So
Agreed. Yeah, I think that's important. I think because a lot of times, again, that's one of the things we don't think about. Like that's one of those conversations that may not always happen in the beginning. Like, if this don't work out, what if I have to, move on and,
right.
I got something else shaking over here. Like, when is it okay when is it okay to introduce,
right.
To my new babe? Like, that's just a conversation that a lot of people don't have. But
Karl,
I think,
let us know what you think about that.
Well, I mean, Tiffany knows that this is going to springboard us into that part of the conversation about just how my relatively good co-parenting experience shifted, right? So obviously, when me and his mom split up, I'm classic baby daddy, right? I'm like, don't you have another man around my kid? Don't you handle, I'm doing that whole thing, right? But I don't think she's actually complying, right? But I did tell her that. I mean, I'm not, and I was serious enough about it that I guess she actually was compliant. I was like, don't you ever have another dude around my child? I don't care what the reason is. I'll set it off. Don't play with me. Okay. So then, he's 6, right? So still at a very impressionable age. He's not in a place where he can communicate to me freely. There's all these things. Fast forward, he's 15 now. Okay. And there's literally no communication that he really has to go through his mom because he has a cell phone. I'm just talking about whatever. But he's old enough and, badass enough that, something wasn't right. He's going to say something and do something about it. So I'm not thinking that that's still a thing. Okay. I don't know that this is still this thing where, and in my mind, it was never two-way to begin with. It was, you don't have anybody around my child. I'm going to do what I want to do. Right.
Not fair.
Right.
Typical.
The audacity. Right. So, all of a sudden, I pop up in a well-publicized relationship. I guess, I don't know.
Very.
Yeah. Sorry, Doc. But and I've been dating all this time, and Trey's been around people that I dated, but not anything too crazy. And so all of a sudden, she takes issue with it. And I was like, it's been like 10 years. Like, what are you even talking about? Like, go sit down. Like, what are you even tripping over? And she was like, I never have anybody around Trey and da-da-da-da. And my thought was, we had a schedule where we have them equal time. So you got plenty of time to go do your thing, and please go do it, please. So I can stop subsidizing your life for you. Please go find somebody to be with. I pray. Okay. Not thinking that he never really had anybody around him. And I'm just, he go with me wherever I go. Right. So a little bit of unfairness there that I didn't actually realize was a thing. So then I guess she took his phone one night, which was an issue in and of itself because I pay for that phone. You don't take anything from him that you don't pay for. Where they do that at? Do they do moms? Is that a thing? I don't know. Somebody educate me. But I didn't understand it, right? And our thing has always been like, if he needs discipline, you come to me, I'll discipline him. Okay. And then that'll be that. Don't take stuff from him. Definitely don't put your hands on him. Right. You don't be spanking my baby. I don't play that. But
you can? But you can?
When he was little, yeah. When he was but now, like, you know what I mean? Like, I hadn't spanked him in years, and you better not spank him either. That's always been my thing. But anyway, she takes his phone, she goes through his phone, and me and my now ex and her daughter, we had a group chat where we would just throw like TikToks and stuff in, that kind of thing or whatever. So she sees that and realizes that's a thing. And so she hits me up and was like, I need to meet this new chick that apparently you have our child around. And I was like, I had our child around a lot of chicks, but
jeez Louise.
Oops, my bad. But she, I didn't like the way she approached it because I literally said, that's cool. How about I take y'all to lunch tomorrow? I was gonna take everybody to lunch, let them do whatever it is y'all do when y'all get together. Yes, girl, and all that kind of stuff. Y'all doing. I was gonna let them do that. Yeah, yes, and all that, whatever. So that's what I'm thinking is gonna happen. And I was like, that's cool. Let me know. We'll get to lunch. Y'all can meet. She then, because she had his phone, then finds my ex's number and texts her directly and was like, apparently you've been around my child and I need to meet you. And she started just doing really weird, out of character stuff.
Flag on the play.
I spazzed.
Technical foul.
Oh my God. And she, again, boundaries, right? She did that and I lost it because it created conflict between me and her because here I told her that we get along fine. I don't have baby mama drama. Like, his mom is a great mom. And now his mom was acting like a complete fool. Right. But what I lost sight of was that, number one, that's a continuous conversation you're supposed to have. I had stopped investing in anything related to how we manage because I felt like our system was strong enough. But this is one topic we didn't breach. And I kind of took my eye off the ball and it caused a massive issue, which is what actually propelled us into actually going through the court system now. That was the catalyst for that. I said, let me be clear. I will pay any amount of money to make sure that you don't feel like at any point you can step in, number one, and tell me to do anything. You know better than that. But you're crossing boundaries that may or may not have been there. But we're going to put them in place now. And they're going to be hard boundaries, right? Which ultimately, I don't know that that's what she was going for. And I don't know that it worked to her advantage, but that's where we are now. So that's how I actually got from what seemingly was a really good co-parenting relationship to this court-mandated, paperwork-driven relationship, which we never had before. I mean, she'd call me and, she mentioned her tires on her car were, didn't pass inspection. I'm like, take it to my guy. He'll put tires on it. Like, that was always our thing. I felt like that was my responsibility, is to make sure that they were good collectively so that he could benefit from that. And it didn't matter. It wasn't on paper. So all those dollars I spent, all the time I spent helping her move, helping her get a bird out of her house one time when a bird was going crazy in her house, all that stuff means nothing. The only thing is that paperwork.
So let me ask this: that Carl's last few moments of conversation made me think about something. The relationships between co-parents can be extremely stressful at times, right? For a lot of us. How are you all managing the stresses that come along with being a co-parent? And like, how are you coping? Like, what are you all doing for
drinking
self-care?
I'm just kidding.
Casamigos, huh? What are you all doing for healthy ways to cope with some of these stressors that come along? Because again, I've been through it. I was 14 years strong. I'm talking about when I would look at the phone and I would see that name, my heart would start racing. Boom, 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 boom.
That
Right?
anxiety is real.
Anxiety is real. So, and at the time, I didn't have the healthiest ways of coping with those things. So, we're all adults here. We're all living in this country where we got bills, we got jobs, we got all the other things that are going on in our lives. And I think having a very rough co-parenting relationship only adds stress to that. So, what are some things that you all are doing personally? To handle the stress that can come along with it, because again, y'all, like, we all got kids, like, even with COVID, and it's just different, man. So how are y'all handling that?
I think you should answer that, Dion. How are
Me?
You
you?
want to go?
Oh, I go to therapy every 2 weeks. I mean,
Yeah.
listen.
So
Yeah,
therapy.
I talk to my therapist every 2 weeks. She's one of my favorite people in the world. Without her, I don't know where I would be right now. I told her just last week. I said, "Yo, when I started coming to you almost 2 years ago, I was in a super dark place, and this has literally saved my life." Right? Just because I don't know where I would have been. I was depressed. I was still suffer from anxiety, like all of those things. That when I look back at it, the foundation of that thing comes from the fact that I was going through so much to just see my daughter, right?
Yeah.
I was having to go through so much. There was so much pain and that's so much trauma that's associated with being a black man and going to a courtroom and standing in front of a judge and telling this judge why I'm fit to be in my daughter's life 50% of the time, right? And talking to these people that don't look like me, don't talk like me, don't sound like me, and I'm explaining to them like why I need to be here, right? So a lot of the depression and the anxiety and the sadness that I felt in my life stemmed from that and from that situation, right? And I wouldn't have been able to come to grips with those things if I were not in therapy. If she would let me come see her every week, I'll be there every week. But now I'm there every 2 weeks because her schedule's so full. But that for me, and just really, really thinking and processing, like, the decisions that I'm making now are for these babies. Like, the things that I'm doing is for these babies. So I have to make sure that I am being my true and authentic self at all times, right? So I can't present myself as being happy around my kids when I know that I'm not, right? When I know that I'm going through something. I have to be able to make mental health and make these mental health conversations real. And so, because when they get out in the world,
that too. Ooh, just
say it one time, bro.
the normalization and the socializing of that mental health thing that you're doing for your kids, so that they don't look at that as being something you do when something's wrong.
Yeah.
But it's something you do because you just need to do it.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody in my family go to a therapist unless it was something that was tragic happened, or it wasn't just what they were doing for preventative maintenance, right? They just weren't. So showing them that is probably the most powerful thing you're doing for them.
Yeah. You have to show them, because when they get out in the real world, they have to have the tools to live their lives and to adapt in this world that's totally different from the world that we four grew up in, right? So this post-COVID world that our kids are going to be living in once COVID is totally over, it's going to be totally different than the world that they were living in before COVID, right? Which was totally different than the world that we grew up in. So we 3 times removed from where we were in the 90s. Like,
I read something super crazy. I read something super crazy the other day that said kids that are born in 2020 and afterwards are actually, they have projected that these kids will grow up with somewhat of a developmental delay mentally and
I could see that.
because number one, everybody's wearing masks, so they miss facial cues. They're going to miss out on being able to identify facial cues. They're also going to miss out on hearing people clearly, which is going to delay their ability to speak clearly. But just that kind of social ability to watch facial expressions, they're actually going to grow up in a world where they don't have as much access to that as we did pre-COVID. And it's going to impact them, their ability to be social, which is going to in turn, create a psychological challenge, because they're not going to have the same social skills. So they're going to have these other tools in their toolbox to just be social, just because they can't see people's mouths.
Right.
That's the craziest thing I've ever heard.
I mean, my 9-year-old told me, she's like, I'm socially awkward. Like, she recognizes that she is not the same kid she was pre-COVID, you know? And then when you
that's why they needed to go back to school. I really think they needed to go back to school, because I'm like, these computers all day, like them trying to learn, like there was a decline with the schoolwork and the grades, and it was a lot. These kids are having to endure a lot.
They're not talking to other kids. Like, what in the world?
And think about the fact that the majority of our communication is nonverbal, right? So if half of that is going to be obstructed by a mask or these glass, partitions, then their communication skills and their socialization skills are going to go down the toilet, like it's going to be hard.
100%. So that need to have these other tools, whether it be, therapy, not just emotional therapy, but even just, therapy on how to be more social, and which those things are going to have to be infused into the normal everyday life of these kids, or they're going to fall behind. This next generation of kids, they're going to suffer if we as the parents don't, number one, identify that and find ways to counter it.
And I think it's an important conversation to have with the co-parent, right? Because especially if the kid is with one parent more so than the other, of course, the primary or custodial parent will see things that the other parent may not, right? So make sure that we're having those conversations to be like, okay, she acting a little weird, or he's doing something a little different. Pay attention to that when they're with you, or you know what I mean? Or let's talk about our strategy for kind of mitigating that so that it's just not happening 50% of the time. Or
if you can't talk to each other, then how are you even going to share these things with each other that may be critical to your child's growth and development, because you won't even talk to each other? And that's coming from the person that makes his baby mama email him. So
that's real though.
So and I want to start putting a button on this. Tiff, did you want to ask any other questions? Any other line of questioning? Anything you want to touch on?
We kind of touched on a lot of stuff already. No, go ahead.
Okay. So I'll ask this. Let's start with Karl. I want you to kind of, what are some lessons that you've learned, not just from this conversation, but lessons that you've learned in your co-parenting journey that you can share with someone who may be struggling with their current relationship with their co-parent, and what tips would you give them that they can take away from this?
First and foremost, drop the pride, drop the machismo, drop all that. I spent so many years trying to be that guy that, I'm sure that I wasted critical years in developing a more positive and productive relationship with her, just being her baby daddy and acting crazy, right? Drop that, fellas, and drop that, and I'm gonna speak from the fellas' perspective. Understand that that relationship that you have is often the model for what your child's gonna understand. You have to take yourself out of that situation and figure out, even in separation, how can I create a model relationship for my kid to look at and be able to pull positive things out of, so that they can be better than what we were. I mean, if the relationship that you have with, your co-parenting partner gives no value to your child, gives your child nothing to pull from, then you're just absolutely just doing them a disservice. So, the ego thing and all that stuff, you got to kind of strip that all away. And again, just focus on making sure that your child has positive examples and sees positive interactions. Today at my son's soccer game, like, me and his mom don't really cross paths a lot. But we were able to cross paths today and, crack a couple of jokes. We pulled, we kind of did the thing that you did, because our prior interactions over the last 6 months have been either court mandated or extremely awkward. Today actually was kind of normal. It was, a couple of little jokes here,
Maybe this is the day that everything changes.
I had a Showtime day, right? I had a Showtime day where I didn't necessarily not want to be there. And it was his soccer game. It was down in Lyman, South Carolina, which is down by Spartanburg, Greenville. Really good game. Some of his friends came, so it was just a positive environment. And although I know he was focused on the game, I also know that matters to him, because normally I sit at one end of the parent row, and she's at the other. with our lawn chairs, right? We keep, at least 6 or 7 parents between us.
Looking crazy.
Well, just looking crazy for no reason. But today we actually sat next to each other along with his friend's mom and those folks. And, we're able to really kind of be his village for the first time in a while. So understanding that village that you create for your child that we talked about earlier, it has to include the other person.
Yeah.
Good stuff.
You cannot create a village without them. It's just not going to work. So find a way to create a village that works, and makes that person feel like they are a part of it and that they have a say in it and that they're welcome. I have done a poor job of that over the last 6 to 9 months. Today may have been my showtime day where there was just enough of that to make me go, okay, I can redirect my energy in a more positive way, and try to keep building that village that I know he deserves. So just make sure that you understand that you cannot build a successful village for your child without that other parent, especially if they want to be present. If they're there to be present, you got to include them.
And I think it's important to understand that as parents, each day that we wake up is a new opportunity to change the things that we may have gotten wrong the day before. Right.
Facts.
Each day that we wake up is a new opportunity for us to change what we have done. Abby is yawning. She got 5 boys, so we're gonna go ahead and see her. I know they didn't broke her down. What
We had football today, so we had to travel for football.
Stinky laundry to go through.
Right. She's tired. All right, go ahead and drop it on her. What are some things that you would say to some folks who might not necessarily have the best co-parenting relationships? What tips would you provide?
Yeah, I'm gonna go on the opposite side of him, where they are successfully co-parenting. If you're not even successfully co-parenting, but you have a desire to, keep your hands clean. Don't say bad things about the other parent in front of them. Be optimistic and prepare your child. Eventually maybe that other parent will come around. You want them to be able to draw their own perception of who that parent is. So I just say keep your hands clean and just be positive.
That's good. Tiff, what you think? I'm gonna close this out.
Yeah, one thing that comes to mind as you all were talking was this idea of like choosing your battles, right? Like I think there's so much to sift through, right? Because it's this old relationship and the kid and where I'm doing now and what they're doing now, all that stuff, right? And there's so many things that we can bicker about, we can fight about, we can go to war about, right? But choose those battles. Like, is it really important that I make this difficult for the other person? Is it, what I mean? Like, is that gonna be in the best interest of our kid? Is that gonna be in the best interest of me? Like, that's energy that I gotta put in, to go through whatever it is. So I would just say choose your battles for sure. I echo everything that Karl and Taunisha said already. But if you have a willing partner, don't create obstacles or challenges that are unnecessary, because you know what I mean. Like, you're not hurting anybody but your child. If you claim to love them and want to be there and create a life for them that's special and shows them that they're important in this world, like, don't even do that. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that we can be investing our energy in. Of course, our children being one of the most important, but like, just pick your battles and don't put energy into something that's really not going to benefit you or your child or children. Because it's not going to help anybody. And it's just going to create more angst in a situation that's already kind of not necessarily ideal to begin with. So, kind of use the resources that you have, the tools that you have, the village that you have, to just make it the best circumstance for everybody that's involved.
Yeah. And I would think the gem that I want to drop is just to say that for anyone who is going through it with a co-parent and things are not going the way that you think they should, like, think about the future and don't necessarily think about what's happening in the moment, right? Because sometimes we get so caught up in what's going on in this moment, how they made me feel in this moment, what she said, what he said, what she did, in this moment, that we forget that this ain't gonna last forever, right? And I'm living proof. 14 years, like, it don't last forever. And the stresses that come along with it, a lot of times it don't even be worth it, because if you were to choose your battles, right, then you wouldn't have to worry about having this sort of stress, and just sometimes you got to let them have it and say, all right, you got it. Like, I ain't gonna fuss with you, I ain't gonna fight with you. You got it. Like, you got it. Like, I don't have it in me to go back and forth with you, right? Because I have to preserve my mental health to be sure that I'm at my best for my babies, right? Because I don't want my children seeing me all down and low and low energy and can't get it together, and my mental health is down when they come around, and I can't play with them, I can't take them outside because I don't feel like it. Nah, I got to be at my best, and they have to see me ready to give them everything that they need, right? So just understand that this time period that you might be going through, it don't last forever, and some stuff just ain't worth fighting for. But you have to pick your battles, and at the end of the day, you got to know that it's all about the babies. So just real quick, y'all, tell them how they can follow y'all on social media. I know, Abby, you got books to push. Promote yourself, whatever you got going on.
Need a signed copy of that book, Abby.
Yes. My IG handle is at I am Taunisha. And my books are on Amazon. I have one called God Co-Parenting, and I have a series I'm writing about my life. It's going to be 8 books total. I only have out 2 now. The third one is dropping in 2022. So it's called The Shameless Plug, The Curse of My Father, where I pretty much talk about my life and all the decisions I made as an adult because I didn't have my father, and, generational curses and things like that. So it takes you on a journey. So yeah.
Need a signed copy of that too.
I got you.
So we'll have you back on the show to talk about that, because I think it's important to talk about the father-daughter relationship. If that's something that we've discussed before.
Right.
I think that's a very, very important topic. So let's plan to have you back on the show to discuss that. Karl, tell them how they can follow you and tell them how they can get at you.
Yeah. I'm on Instagram at Karl, Karl Macklin, Macklin Jr. So at Karl Macklin Jr. I'm in the Black People Parenting group. So
one of the original members.
Yes.
Yeah.
Karl was one of the only 50 of us.
Exactly. Yeah. And now y'all are what? 20, 30, 50,000, 60,000?
We close to 5,000. We close to 5,000.
Listen, I'm like, what is happening? Every time I go in there, it's like introducing new members, and it's like 100 of them. I'm like, oh my God. That's super duper exciting. So I'm there if anybody wants to hit me up. I do want to say, because I realized both of you said that you moved to Raleigh as 919's very own. Okay, the prodigal son. I hope that the city is treating y'all well. Hopefully, the next time I'm in town, we can all get together. And
I didn't know that you were from here, Karl.
I'm 919's very own.
Where are you located now?
I'm in Charlotte. Yeah.
Okay. I never knew that. I didn't know that.
Yeah, Karl took me on a little tour of
the welcome to the city, tour. So I hope the city is showing y'all a lot of love. If you're from the Raleigh area, y'all show them love. But yeah, it's good to know that y'all are local, and I'm definitely looking forward to catching up with y'all the next time I'm there. I tend to get caught up with my mama. Don't be wanting me to go see nobody. I come into town and she just think I got to be with her all the time. I'm like, I got friends. I got people who I want to go see. That. She don't want me to go see nobody. She don't want me to have no friends.
She don't care about that.
But I'm gonna pull away from that the next time and make sure that we can all kind of connect and that kind
Let's
of.
Let's do it.
Very. Are you in Raleigh too?
That he failed.
I'm in Raleigh.
Everybody in Raleigh.
Everybody's in Raleigh.
Come on.
I'm just gonna move back to Raleigh. I'm just gonna move back then. If all my people's there, I'm just gonna move back. And I'm so called a writer, but I'm not fancy.
Karl is also a writer. I didn't realize we had 2 writers in the room, but
yeah. So I'm definitely looking forward to this and more content. You guys have a cool and very very much needed platform here. So
yes.
Kudos to you.
Thank you all for being part of the village. It's been a joy. It's been super dope. And we will catch y'all on the next episode of Black People Parenting, the podcast. Peace.
Goodbye.